Dave, I am so glad you're back with us again. I just can't believe we are here at another Wednesday for our live show.
Yeah, I just hope I don't fall asleep on you, CR. I didn't get a lot of sleep last night, so if I nod off, I apologize. You're going to have to send somebody over here to wake me up.
Do you stay awake the late hours doing work?
So no, Grizzly game last night. We had the nightcap, I guess. I'm not much of one for getting done with a basketball game at midnight, but that was the situation last night. And then my son had to be up for religious classes this morning at 5. So it was a short night, but very excited to be here. Very excited to be talking about retirement.
Well, I'm glad you're here, Dave. That sounds like a very short night, but I'm glad you're with us. Glad you're excited because, Dave, I've got so many questions today I want to throw at you.
Yes, they keep coming, which is great. Hopefully that means we're helping more and more people get answers to the questions they have so they can get solutions to where they need to be in retirement.
And Dave, today some of the questions I brought up, I mean, again, as we kind of tease about the show every week, is kind of the main 3 or 4 things you talk about in one of your webinars, the foundation for a secure retirement. So some of the questions we're talking about today are Social Security, Medicare, long-term care, and we don't have elder abuse today, but that's the 4 that you touch on your webinar.
Yeah, such important topics. When we look at it from a retirement side, these are things that affect everyone. The stock market's not going to affect everyone. Real estate market's not going to affect everyone. Bitcoin's not going to affect everyone. Social Security, Medicare, long-term care are pretty much going to impact everyone's life. And even elder abuse is going to have a big impact for many of you. Great topics to be able to better understand, to make sure from Social Security standpoint, you don't leave tons of money on the table you should have gotten. Medicare standpoint, you don't end up paying a bunch of money out that you shouldn't have paid out. And long-term care, hopefully saving enough to figure out how you're going to cover it.
And if you are here with us live today, thank you for being here. And also go ahead and submit your questions. We love getting your questions so we can throw those at Dave in between all the questions that I already have laid out for him today. So what we do on this show is I just throw Dave as many questions as we can in our 30-minute block here. And again, we encourage you to submit your questions. And if you are on replay, you can always go to retirementriskadvisors.com and go over to the Contact Us tab and go ahead and submit your question there. And we will get those on future shows. All right, Dave, if you are ready, again, I want to just throw out some questions to you. This is one from Patrick. Patrick is a CPA and asked, when looking into long-term care options, what is the first thing I should have my clients consider?
Yeah, the biggest thing they need to consider is where they are at in their own life. What's their age, what's their health, where are they really at from a personal standpoint in being able to qualify for the various options, what resources do they have available that maybe could be used to pay for it themselves. And then you can really start looking into options that are available. Because again, if you're in a situation where you're in your 60s or 70s and don't have good health, some of the options available to you may be off the table already.
So Dave, what you're saying is the important thing is not to wait until you start experiencing some type of physical or, some decline in life.
Yeah, we all do that for whatever reason. We love to kick the can down the road as far as we can until it becomes a crisis. And when we look at it from a long-term care option, definitely something that far too many people wait too long on.
And Dave, if we don't do this, we procrastinate. Obviously it's going to be more expensive as we get closer, right?
Yeah, the problem is when we look at a long-term care event, average cost between $300,000 and $500,000. For males, they end up in the facility much shorter time or having a problem much shorter, 2.2 years, compared to a female, 3.7 years. So we're talking big dollars. So if you're looking at it from an individual standpoint, saying, hey, at age 60, I'm going to start figuring this out, you got a lot of money you've got to figure out how to save. Or again, even if you're buying insurance is just using money to pay for it. So the older you get, obviously, much more expensive it's going to be able to cover that, because all they're doing is taking your money, investing it, getting a return, and saying, okay, at the end, we're going to have X dollars to cover you. By the time you get to an age, you're going to have an issue.
And Dave, I think about this as how quickly this could drain a lifetime of savings if it's not done right.
And it is. And there's so many things out there, CR. The other day, I was listening to a podcast on the FIRE community, and these people were talking on there about how much money they needed to have to be able to live. And we're talking 30-year-old CR that were thinking $500,000 was enough to get them through the next 50 years of their life.
Wow.
CR, with the risk and all the things that go on and health issues. And again, heaven forbid they have any kids, no way in the world that's going to be enough to be able to get them through that period of time. But you're right, CR. And when we get into retirement, we can have people that have even prepared saying, look, I retired with hundreds of thousands of dollars, maybe $1 million. All of a sudden I have this type of an event, and half of it's gone overnight, or 100% of it's gone overnight, just to make sure that I get taken care of through a couple of years before I pass on.
And we are here to make sure, Dave, that we get all of your questions answered by our audience, and also to make sure that we're planning and preparing for this, because you're right. A lot of times, hey, we think 500,000, a million, that's great, but we don't look at all the risks that are on the table. And that's something you're really here to help eliminate or reduce those risks as we're facing retirement.
Yeah, because the better prepared we are, the better anything turns out. No matter what you do, if you're prepared and you put in the time and the effort to get yourself ready, even if bad things happen, usually much easier to get through those times. Whatever it be, in a situation where we're talking about retirement, whether it be natural disasters that could happen in your life. If you've got kids, every day, anything comes up that, hey, if you prepared yourself in various ways to deal with issues, much easier to get through it.
Yes, that is correct. Well, Dave, let's jump over to my next question. This is from Gregory and Sydney. We are considering downsizing our home and moving into a retirement community. Would long-term care or Medicare help with cost?
Let me address Medicare first, since it's a very simple answer. When we look at this from a Medicare standpoint, understand it has not, does not, nor will not cover a long-term care event. It's going to cover the first 20 days. That's if you, prior to COVID. Now, since COVID, they're waiving this restriction, but prior you had to be in the hospital for 3 days admitted before you went into a nursing home. They'd cover the first 20, and then the next 80, they co-insured, but your co-payment, CR, $195 a day. So, I mean, we're talking like $15,000 by the time you get out of that period of time. And then after that, you're on your own. So take Medicare off the table. Now, from a long-term care insurance standpoint, if you're moving into a retirement community, probably not, because in that community, what's happening is you're basically just getting yourself in a position where you can be in an environment that makes it easier for you to live. Maybe that's a community where many of them have the same interest as you, so you can get together and do activities. Maybe they have a little bus there that takes you downtown to various activities. That's not going to get covered. You're going to have to get to a point where you can't do 2 of the 6 activities of daily living. And at that point, long-term care insurance would step in.
Dave, what other advice do you have for Gregory and Sydney as they are looking to downsize? I mean, that's quite a challenge and a feat in itself. So we got to look at this and say, okay, what are some of the options? Because they're looking at just the 2 simple options right here that they're thinking.
Yeah, one of the biggest things I would say is more people ought to look at this option. We don't see a lot of people do this, and they end up dying very house rich and income poor. They don't get the income out of their home. Now, another option would be a reverse mortgage for a percentage of the population that's interested in that. But we have situations, I would guess, and even in theirs, where maybe the home's worth, let's say, $600,000. They're going into a retirement community in a smaller place that's maybe 1 story, easier for them to deal with their aging bodies in, and it costs $300,000. Well, that extra 300 could go a long ways to do other things. Now, hopefully they don't have to give it to a facility because of a long-term care event, that they don't get to that point. But far too many of us end up dying at these big homes, end up passing them on to our kids, and we live a retirement that doesn't look anything like it should because we have no cash.
And Dave, I'm really glad you brought up the reverse mortgage, because I have another question here from Pamela. If I still owe on the home, am I able to take a partial reverse mortgage?
The answer is no. And let me say, there's really no partial reverse mortgage. Now, maybe what you're referring to is a credit line option, which there are credit line options in home equity conversion mortgage, which is what most of you would get. That's the government version. Some of you may have to go to a private company to be able to get a reverse mortgage if you don't meet their criteria, or maybe you're trying to get more money than the government's willing to offer based upon their limit. But if we look at this, any debt has to be paid off. They're going to go in first position, very similar to any type of home mortgage you're putting on. There's no seconds from the government in the reverse mortgage market. Now, again, from another party, maybe. I haven't seen any of those out there. But then understand, once you put that on the home, it's on the home. Now, whether you take a large chunk out of it, which I don't recommend for most people to ever do, whether you take a monthly payment, which would be an option, but really not what I would recommend, or you take the credit line option, which is the one that I like for most people, all of that's going to lock up your house. Now, why do I like the credit line option? Because it really kind of becomes what you're talking about here. You just pull out money as you need it. If you don't need it, you're not gonna have to pay the interest or have the interest accrue. You don't pay it until you pass away anyway, but your interest won't accrue. And some of that will be able to continue to grow. The amount that you would be able to get out of there actually grows each year with inflation.
Dave, is a reverse mortgage for everyone out there in retirement?
Absolutely not. About probably 10% of America, when we look at it, really should have a reverse mortgage. And most of them, it's later on in the retirement. The earlier you get started, obviously, the more interest you're going to accrue, the less money you're going to be able to get yourself. I would recommend for most people to wait at least past age 70. But again, if you're in a situation where I'm living off Social Security, I got a home that's worth hundreds of thousands of dollars. Why in the world would you not take that equity out and start using it to have a better life? Then again, pass it on to your kids and you live a miserable life. They take the money, blow it, and it's gone. And, everything's just said and done.
Yeah, I agree. So, Dave, if we look at a reverse mortgage, is it easy? Is this something that somebody can just go into and it's like just a simple transaction?
It's not overly difficult, but no, it's not easy either. Meaning, not only do you have to go through and any mortgage process where you got to fill out a bunch of paperwork, you got to have appraisals done, those type of things. You also do have to go through counseling, which I think is a good thing. Unfortunately, it's not maybe what you expect it to be. If you go to a counselor and or talking with someone, you may expect feedback a little bit of them giving you some guidance on what you should be doing. This is a situation where they're providing you education, just making sure you understand how it works, making sure you're not getting into it because someone else is recommending you should get into it for their best interest, not for yours, but they're going to educate you on that. So you have to go through the counseling. You do have to go through with the appraisals, all the paperwork. But then once that's done, pretty easy to get signed up.
Dave, I love the fact that you brought that up in this conversation. Is sometimes we get talked into different things because it's for their best interest and not for ours. And I think that comes along with some of the things you've talked about through elder abuse, through some of your other webinars, because a lot of times we're not always looking out for those in our circle for their best interest. We're just kind of looking out for ourselves sometimes. And it hurts.
It does, and it happens all the time. I was talking to an individual the other day that was complaining about some various insurance products that he didn't like, which based upon his facts and circumstances, I get. One of them was his best friend that ended up selling him a product that he shouldn't have sold him. And the guy didn't understand how the product worked up front. And then once he figured it out after he bought the product, he went back to his friend and said, look, this doesn't seem to be working very well for me. Obviously it did for you. And his friend had to admit that, yeah, I sold it because I needed the money, not because you needed good retirement planning.
Oh, that's heartbreaking.
Or I wanted the money. Maybe it's probably more want than need, but it is sad. And unfortunately that happens out there quite a bit.
And I want to remind you, those who are with us live, again, if you have questions, go ahead and get those submitted in the comments and we will do our best to get those in there as well. Well, Dave, let me jump over because again, I do have a Social Security here from Freya. How do survivor benefits work under Social Security?
Yeah, so let me talk as much as I can about this. I could go on for 30 minutes, which we don't really want to do that during this type of a question and answer segment in regard to survivor benefits, because they are pretty extensive. When we look at it, not only would your surviving spouse, if you're married, be able to get surviving benefits, an ex-spouse may be able to get surviving benefits. If you've got kids in the home that are under age 18 or in high school and under the age of 19, they would be able to get benefits, and potentially your parents would be able to get benefits through the survivor benefits program. So as we look at it, a lot of benefits available. The standard one is to a spouse once you passed away. And what would happen is if your benefits were higher than theirs, they would be entitled to whatever your benefits were when you passed away. And obviously they'd have to meet certain age restrictions. At age 60, they could start getting those benefits. They'd be reduced. And then at their full benefit age would be entitled to 100% of whatever you were receiving.
Dave, since we don't have a lot of time to cover this, where is a great resource they could go and gather more information on this?
Yeah, my recommendation would be our webinar, the Foundation for a Secure Retirement. I do recommend to anyone, even if you're not a CPA, this is 4 hours of great information. And it probably should be 6 or 8. I'm going to tell you, there's a couple of things that we've done here. One, I speak fairly quickly, which sometimes can be a little difficult for some people because I'm going to go through a lot of information. Number two, we realize that it's very hard to get people into an 8-hour class to go through all this information. So, CR created an amazing slide deck. We get the information out there very quickly, but you get what you need. You understand what it's going to take for a parent to get benefits. You understand those survivor benefits and how they interact with your own. Because one thing you do need to understand, anytime we're talking about Social Security, you're never going to get two checks. Meaning from a survivor side, we mentioned that, whatever that person is getting, if they got more than you did, you'd be entitled to their benefits. Well, then you're going to lose yours. So it's the higher of the two. You're never going to get two different benefits. You may get extra benefits added onto your own, but don't think you're getting both checks once someone passes away.
And Dave, one thing I want to bring up about all of these webinars as we continue to talk about these, because it's just more education. It's just more information that you can use as you're meeting with financial planners, as you're meeting with your family, that you would just have more information and education that I feel like we're just really lacking right now.
Yeah, and it's happening all over. And I will tell people, you need to educate yourself. Again, if you're looking at any product, life insurance, annuity, even Bitcoin, you're looking at the stock market, you need to do some homework to make sure you really understand the way things work. And if your advisor's not willing to explain, especially if you're getting into annuity or life insurance products, I love various products inside of that industry. I think they help us get to a more secure retirement, but you need to be educated on it. If you don't understand something that's being presented, please don't buy it, because there's a chance you're going to get the right product, but there's a high chance you're not going to get what you need. And as a result, you're going to wake up one morning and go, wait, I just bought something. Now I've got buyer's remorse. The penalties on these things are horrible if you get it out of them the first 5 to 10 years. Now, what do? I'm either stuck in a rock and a hard spot. I've either got a bad product or I'm going to lose a bunch of money. And you may do both. I'm on both sides. You keep the product, you may lose a bunch of money if it's not the right product you should have gotten.
Well, Dave, I know I've got a bunch more questions here. We're moving through here really quickly. So I wanted to jump on a few. So these next two are going to be a little tricky, but I want to bring them up because I think these are important to talk about right now. But with the Fed increasing interest rates, what impact will this have on retirement? This is from Summer.
Yeah, this is a tricky one because it's going to have a lot of impact across the board. Now, hopefully, it's going to help curb inflation for everyone. The biggest killer for everyone is inflation and taxes because we all have to pay it. Inflation's even worse than taxes because usually there's provisions to get many, especially the poor segment of the population, out of having to pay taxes. But when we look at inflation, every one of us has to eat. Most of us have to have some type of gas in a vehicle. We've got all these situations. We've got to buy goods, services, pay for all of these things. Our utilities, we've got to have all these things that are going up. So hopefully it's going to help curb that inflation, which is becoming a killer to retirees. Now, on the other side, for those of you that have income, hopefully it's also going to make it, for those of you that are conservative, to where you can get a better rate of return on your certificates of disappointment, on your checking accounts, on all those things or savings accounts that you have out there. What it's going to do to the market, still some uncertainty. I saw earlier this morning, we had the increase expected day of a 0.5 point, and the market was up. That they're looking at as good news because it's something that already projected. But again, a lot of uncertainty going on here. But let's get rid of that inflation. Inflation's not helping anyone, and it affects those who have the least amount of income the worst.
And Dave, you're kind of talking about immediate things of what we need to take care of right now. So I'm bringing up this other question because they kind of tie together. But how will today's historical high inflation impact retirement 10, 20 years down the road? This is from Linda and Glenn.
Yeah, so when we look at it, it's going to have horrible impacts because the problem with retirees is we have a big bucket of money when we go into retirement for those who have saved. Now, some have no bucket, and inflation is going to affect you because it's not, Social Security is your only source of inflation adjusted income, and maybe your only source of income, and it's not keeping up. So it's going to have a big impact. But take that person that just went into retirement that was thinking they were going to spend $50,000 a year, and now because of inflation went up 10%, they're spending 55. Well, that may not seem like a lot going into your retirement. So, okay, I'm spending an extra $5,000. What impact's that going to have? Well, take that out over 20 years. Now you've spent 50,000. You've lost the growth on that. That could make you run out of money 2 or 3, 4 years faster, maybe even more than what you were expecting. So that's the issue. Most retirees, unfortunately, do not plan how they're going to get their income through the retirement. So again, we go into it and we're like, oh, life's wonderful. We got all this money we've saved up and we can take all the money we want out. And if we get out of our guidelines, oh, well, we've got time to catch it up. In reality, it just doesn't happen, CR.
And we're living longer. And that's another thing that I think people don't understand is they feel like, hey, this is going to get me through the next 5 or 10 years. But you're saying there's 10, 20, 30 years still left.
Yeah, if I could recommend for anyone, get your basic living money. Tom Hegna talks about paychecks and playchecks. You better get your paycheck in retirement in guaranteed lifetime income. You're a fool if you don't, in my opinion, because if you look at it, unless you've saved outrageous sums of money and you're very disciplined, you have a high probability you're going to run out of money later on. So why in the world not take it and say, look, Social Security is meant to cover 40% of my basic living costs, whether it, does for you or not, maybe more, maybe less. But let's say that it does, and you needed $80,000 during retirement. So we've got $32,000 coming out of Social Security. Well, that other income that we need, guess what? You better get it in guaranteed income. And why wouldn't you? Let's make sure that no matter how long we live, we've got that paycheck coming in, hopefully inflation adjusted. Retirement's pretty easy and easy going at that point. But if you don't have that, again, it's happening, CR, across the nation. People are getting in their late 70s, 80s, running out of money. The money's gone, and they have no way to make it back up.
And Dave, I like that you bring that up because I've got Tony's question and they're talking about, should I consider life insurance for a client who is over 75?
Unless it is a absolute unique situation, absolutely not. Once you get over age 70, cost of that insurance is going to be so high. Now, there was one situation in my own life where we had an individual who was 93, CR, that was the right thing to buy a policy based on their facts and circumstances. Even as expensive as insurance was, it was a better option for them than to not have insurance with what they were trying to do. But for most people, once you get over age 70, stay away from life insurance. It's going to be too expensive, and you're going to be able to find better investment options out there.
Dave, do you find people who are just pushed into these different products just because, like you said at the beginning, there's a couple people that are pushing us because it's their own priorities and they're not so much focused on the person themselves?
Yeah, most of us, there's a cycle in planning, and unfortunately, that cycle is usually more designed to get the advisor where he needs to be than it is to get you where you need to be. If you look at this, doesn't happen across the board. We've got some amazing advisors out there that are doing really good things. But if you're following a cookie cutter plan, that's not the plan you should be having. These plans need to be designed specifically for you. They need to really look at what's going on in your life. We get an 8% rate of return on average. You take a 3% distribution rate and everything's going to work out wonderful. That is not the way your plan should look.
So it's not a set it and forget it then.
Absolutely not. And one other thing, CR, I want to talk about on this insurance side, if you've got health issues like I do, I've had a kidney transplant, don't necessarily look like I'm unhealthy, but obviously from a medical side, they deem me to not be a good risk for them. If you've got health issues too, life insurance really is not going to be an option for you. It's going to cost way too much. Yeah, I can get insurance, but there's no way I'm going to pay the cost it's going to take to have that insurance. Now, luckily, I already had it before I had this issue. But if I were trying to buy new insurance, no way I'm going to pay that price.
Well, Dave, let's see if I can throw in a couple other questions here. This is something I thought was something I wanted to bring up from Reggie. If the company I got my annuity through goes bankrupt, what are my options?
Yeah, recommendation, take that last check, go down to the state lottery, put it in there, and let's see what happened. No, that is not the correct answer. I'm sorry, Reggie. I shouldn't make fun of this. What's going on here? It's a very serious situation. But when we look at it from an annuity side, understand each state has their own insurance fund. So they're going to step in and they're going to help. Number two, other insurance companies do not want to see this type of publicity on the front page of the paper that these companies have gone out of business and you got left holding the bag with no benefits that you had expected. And so they're stepping in as well. So again, it can happen. My best recommendation for anyone who is looking at these products, though, get with a top rated company. We've got companies out there that have been in existence for over 100 years, some of them approaching 150 years, and they've done a great job going through many cycles. Look back over that time, CR. I mean, if you realize all the ups and downs the U.S. has had from the recession to 2000 stock market crash to 2007 and 8 and everything that happened, they've done a good job being able to manage themselves.
And Dave, when I see this is Reggie, I appreciate bringing this up because a lot of times things like this, I don't want to say a lot of times, but things like this can happen. And people will look at this and they'll gauge this on the rest of their retirement or their friend's retirement because of something like this. But what you're saying is align yourself with better companies and with better products. And a lot of times it's not even a better product, it's just making sure you know what product works.
Yeah, when we look at it, CR, most of us taught as kids, or at least I was, and I assume you were, we're a product of who we hang around. Really, when we look at it, and if you hang around a good group of kids, high probability you're going to turn out to be a pretty good kid. If you hang around all the thugs that are out there doing things they shouldn't, high probability that's the life you're going to go down. And it's really the same thing here. We want to hang out with good companies. We want to hang out with the groups that are out there that have proven themselves versus taking a new company that's saying, oh, I can get you, 2% more rate of return. But yeah, we don't have a history. And yeah, you know what? Our financials don't look good. But hey, take that 2% rate of return and let's take the risk together.
Yeah. Well, Dave, I've got one more annuity question I'm going to put in here. If I were to pass away while receiving annuity payments, would my spouse still get the money? This is from Alfie.
It depends on how you set that up. So you have an option to either set it up as a single life annuity or to set it up as a joint life annuity. Now, understand, if you are going to do joint life, your payouts are going to start lower than what they would for single life. And that makes sense. If there's just one life they've got to cover, obviously there's more money they can pay out earlier. But it's really based upon how you structured that to begin with.
So, Dave, as we talk about getting all of these structured and getting them laid out, what is our best bet to make sure we do this right?
You've got to have a comprehensive risk-based plan that's going to go through and look at all of your facts and circumstances. It's going to use software to do the calculations because most of us are not smart enough to do it ourselves and put all the formulas into Excel and other programs we need to. And then that provides a roadmap to say step by step, not only is this what you need to do, but from your side, it should be, this is what I got to get educated on. Step number one is to do Roth conversions over a period of time. Do you understand how Roth conversions work? Do you understand the tax effect they're going to have? Step two may be, hey, let's put an annuity in so our Social Security has a partner to get us through the rest of our retirement. Well, do you understand annuities? Do you understand which annuity is right for you? In my side, it's a fixed index annuity is what I would recommend. Well, what is that? How does it work? What's the illustration? What's the goods? What's the bads? What may go wrong? Those are all questions you should ask to make sure you understand where you're at. But the plan is going to help create those. Really, it's going to provide that opportunity for you, hopefully, to ask questions and then get educated.
And Dave, this isn't similar where I can just go plug these numbers in on my own and just make it work and look at the calculations.
Not that I've seen out there without buying very expensive software that you probably don't know how to run. I mean, that's the other problem. You look at it across the board, and we've all gone through that period of time. As an accountant, those accountants will understand this. When we look at QuickBooks, I often had many people saying, look, I'm just not happy with QuickBooks. I want to go to a more robust accounting system. And it's going to cost me $10,000 more. Maybe I'm willing to pay that, but it's like, that's not your true cost. You know what? A secretary can run QuickBooks. You're going to need a full-fledged accountant to run that software. You're going to pay another 80 to 100 grand to get someone to run the software. So it's a $110,000 cost that you're looking at, not a $10,000 cost. So again, these are all things we've got to look at with your retirement planning. Yeah, I can go do it with a $20,000 software that may take me 6 months to figure out how to use.
So, Dave, I think at the end of this, we just got to make sure we align ourselves with a financial planner that's going to help us to get through this, to make sure that it works and that we're making the right choices. Like you said, we're becoming educated on all of these different products, so we know exactly what direction to go.
Yeah, and I'm going to take it one step further. We definitely need to hang out with those people. I'm going to go back to something that I was taught younger in my life as well. Really, three people. So not take out the financial side. We're going to talk about three other people you should hang out with. Someone that you can inspire. That they can look up to you. You can be an inspiration to them. An equal that you can communicate with, and someone that inspires you. So not only from a financial side, do we need to get someone that we can work with, that we trust and is honest, but I'll tell you, even in your own life, you get yourself surrounded by good people that you can have these relationships with, and you're going to start making some good decisions, and you're going to start seeing more success in your life.
Dave, I really appreciate that. And I think it's very, very wise words. Dave, I have a lot more questions, but it looks like we're running up to the end of time here. So before we get going, I want to see, as you share your final advice here, letting us know that we got to get ourselves aligned with the right people. With that too, Dave, what wisdom do you have for those who are saying, okay, Dave, I'm ready to align myself with the right people, but how do I find those guys?
Yeah, so that's the hard part, obviously. When we look at it, is how do we find people that have our same interests, that have our interests at heart? We've done a lot of the work for you from the advisors that we work with. We do, extensive background checks on them, have to go through testing that's being done to make sure they understand the concepts that we teach, and we do reviews on the work that they do, so we understand that they're doing the right things for clients to make sure that they're getting taken care of. So we can help there. But again, remember, if you're looking at any advisor out there, you've got to be willing to ask a lot of questions, and you've got to make sure they're educating you. If they're not willing to educate you, or they don't even understand the product themselves, don't get into it. Again, you may get lucky. It may turn out to be exactly what you need. Chances are that's not going to be the case.
I love that, Dave. And we want to make sure that you can find all the details at retirementriskadvisors.com. And there you'll be able to get connected with an advisor. And Dave, you can get all the education and look for all the webinars you need right there.
Yeah, we're doing our best to give you everything you need. Now, I continually study. I continually spend time on various podcasts, reading books, reading articles, doing webinars, trying to figure out what I can do to teach you the information you need to know. But we already have a lot of it there. Again, most of your retirement already can be laid out if you just take these classes and invest the time. That's what it's going to take from you. Most of our stuff's free. All you got to do is give us your time, and we'll do the rest. We'll teach you what you need to do, but then you got to take action on it as well. Don't just put it in your bank and say, oh man, I loved what Dave taught about Social Security, but then you don't take action, and you end up in a situation where you lose all the money that you shouldn't have lost.
Yeah, very well said. And I want to remind you that if you did not get your question in today, that's okay. We'll be here again next Wednesday at 11 a.m. Central. We're always here to answer your questions, to make sure that when these things come up, or if they're reviewing or researching or just doing their education or talking to a friend, great opportunity to bring it up. And Dave, thank you so much for being here with us today.
My pleasure.
And for everyone else, again, thank you for being here live and those on replay. If you have any other further questions, please visit us at retirementriskadvisors.com, and we'll see you guys again next week.